Okay, everybody, welcome to day 21. We're looking at Genesis 27 to 29 today. And I noticed that my time has been getting back up there again, so I am going to be attentive today to the time that we use. And don't worry, we're going through three chapters, but I'm just going to sum up one of them for us. So, learning lots here. Genesis 27. Now, I don't know if you remember or not that list that we got from Job of what they knew definitely was not acceptable by God, what he considered to be wicked. If you want to use the word sinful, you can use the word sinful, but rebellious against his nature. It was becoming part of our nature. It was part of the wickedness of what caused him to destroy much of humanity in the flood, which he promised not to do again, because it's just plain that we're broken, that's where our thoughts go towards, and instead of dealing with it in a blanket thing, he was dealing with it in isolated ways. So it's kind of like the with the pandemic, there are some places that deal with localized lockdowns and such, and then there's others who just do a blanket. They do everything. So God was now dealing with cities and with people and such, instead of dealing with all of humanity. So, but do you remember that list? It was one of them. One of the things on that list was the whole thing about deceit. Um, this it was on that list. He doesn't like deceit, and yet during this age, deceit, it just seemed as common as water, right? It just seemed that it was part of what people did, and I guess it's why they had kind of the the things with pledges and all that sort of stuff. And you'll remember that Jesus taught, let your word be yes or no. Um, don't have these oaths, because oaths come from a place of deceit, because people who um, you know if, when you don't trust somebody because you know what you would do in their situation, that kind of thing. So if you have these hearts of deceit, then you are going to require things of guarantees from people, and that's the reason why Jesus told us just to let our yes be yes and our no no. So now what we look at here, I've heard Jacob get a lot of bad press. But when we read through this, the thing I want you to pay attention to is what kind of character did Jacob actually have in comparison to the rest of the family. Like if you look at this whole thing that happened between Jacob and Esau, not the birthright, that was just Esau, and the way that Esau was with his character in being rash. He was just a rash person who didn't really have any forward thinking at all. All he could think of was for the moment. That's how Esau got involved with that, and yet Jacob, I don't know if you could even say took advantage of that. He put a proposition before Esau, and Esau is the one who jumped at it and sold his birthright. But the whole thing about the blessing, that wasn't Jacob's idea at all. That was Rebecca from beginning to end. Rebecca coached them the whole way through. Rebecca arranged everything. It was Rebecca that was concerned about this. So Jacob just obeyed his mom. Now you could say, well, he can think for himself. Yes, yes, he could. So I'm not saying that he's innocent in this, but he's certainly not the one who came up with this plan. And then when you look at the way that Isaac treated Jacob, we can begin to understand, maybe some of the ways that Rebecca was thinking, because Jacob was Rebecca's favorite. She never had favorites. This whole family was messed up because of this whole thing. But Jacob was the second born. Even if it was by seconds, he was still the second born. So Isaac was treating Jacob as the lesser. Really, it's according to tradition. This is the tradition. All the attention went on the firstborn because the firstborn would take the place of the father. The firstborn would become really the head of the family, responsible for looking after the family, really walking in the role of a father. And but Esau, Esau wasn't up to that task. Um, doesn't matter, but this is what Isaac was really treating the boys in the way traditionally that he was supposed to treat the boys, and giving all the attention to Esau. But there were even things about Esau that Isaac favored over Jacob. So then we have Esau, who was just constantly jealous of Jacob due to the mom giving all that attention to Jacob would have caused this jealousy, and Jacob seemed to do things well, and Esau was just jealous of this. So this was just, yeah, let's not put all that blame on Jacob here. Now, here we see in this chapter, we see for the first time what, because we hear about the Jewish blessings all the time. We see here for the first time what a father's blessing looked like, and just the importance they put on that, how important it was. The fact that he was tricked into giving Jacob that firstborn blessing, and then what was left for Esau, and that was Esau's complaint that, Dad, don't you have a second blessing? And it wasn't really much of a blessing that he gave to him. He said some things, but you really wouldn't consider it a blessing. So this was a this really is an important thing to note here, because when it talks about blessings going forward, this was our insight into that. Um, Going into Genesis 28, and we have really we see here the prophetic. It's really the prophetic that we see. Jacob is blessing, Isaac is blessing Jacob and sending him out to get a proper wife, not a wife from the nations around them, but a wife from their family grouping, going to his uncles to find a wife among his cousins, and so he's giving him this blessing, but it's also it's prophetic. He says to him in verse 4, he, God, will give you and your descendants Abraham's blessing. So there's this prophetic thing. This he shouldn't be saying this over Jacob. He should be saying this over Esau. That covenant should come down through Esau, but Isaac sees. He sees clearly here, prophetically. He sees God is telling him that the blessing is going to be handed down through Isaac. So he will give you and your descendants Abraham's blessing, so that you will own the land in which you are now immigrants, the land God gave to Abraham. So he's sending them away from this land, but he's telling them, you're coming back to it, and it's being given to you. He's telling them him this prophetically. The God hasn't pronounced this covenant over Isaac yet, but here, or sorry, over Jacob yet. But here, Isaac is giving Jacob the heads up on this because he knows what's going to happen. So yeah, it's not the tradition. It's not the tradition to see the second born son receive this kind of thing. But we also understand, because we've read the whole Bible, or you've read great portions of the Bible, that God is not a traditionalist. It doesn't matter what you think the tradition is. It does. He's not. God's going to do what He wants to do. The psalmists talk about that. God is in heaven and He does whatever He wants. That's what they say. God is in heaven and He does whatever He wants. So we can't rely upon tradition. Um, in fact, all the way through this, we see in many encounters, he often overlooks the firstborn. And David is just one who comes to mind. He went through all of the sons until he got to the youngest, and he chose the youngest as king, not to make a point, but because he knew the heart of the youngest, and that's what he was concerned about, was the heart. Okay, so down to verse 15 now. We need to make note of this because this is Isaac's first encounter. It's his first encounter with God, at least the first one that is recorded, the first one of any note. And in this encounter, that covenant is spoken over him, and he receives some personal promises. Now, skipping over, we're aware of what the covenant is about the many children that outnumber the sand on the earth, and all that, and the whole thing about the land. But then he gives him these personal promises. I am with you now. Yeah, that's an important promise right there. I am with you now. I will protect you everywhere you go. That's the same promise that was given to Abraham. I will protect you everywhere you go. So don't be afraid of anywhere that you put your foot, because I'm in that place with you. And I will bring you back to this land, no matter how far away you go, no matter if you end up in jail, in prison, no matter if you're on the wrong side of the mountain, you don't know how to get back. I will bring you back to this land. Man, these are really comforting. You could step out in boldness in that. I'm with you. I will protect you wherever you go, and I will bring you back to this place. And he says, I will not leave you until I have done everything that I have promised you. It's like, wow, man, that's powerful. That's powerful. And that's sorry, I've got it in the titles wrong again. It's Jacob. I don't know why I keep messing that up. It's Jacob. It's Jacob's first encounter. Um, yeah, it's a good thing we know that we are being perfected. We are not yet perfect. So it's Jacob we're talking about here. This is powerful. This is just amazing stuff and encouraging, and he can step out in boldness, and no matter what he faces, he knows he's coming back to that land. No matter how bad it looks, he knows he's coming back to the land because that has been promised to him. And then down, see, I got this one right. Jacob's solemn promise. So we get down here in Genesis 28, verse 20 to 21. So Jacob made a solemn promise. This is what he promises back after receiving these promises, after receiving this covenant, after realizing that he's sleeping. He was sleeping there at one of the entrances to heaven. That's how he describes it. One of the entrances to heaven. If God is with me and protects me on this trip I'm taking, and gives me bread to eat and clothes to wear, and I return safely to my father's household, then the Lord will be my God. So in other words, he's saying, if you are faithful to your promises, then I will be faithful to you. That's what he's saying to God. If you are faithful, man, what you just promised me, that's rich stuff. And like, if you're going to do that for me, then I'm yours. I'm yours. And he says that's it. I'm yours. My father's God is my God. Um, Not because of what you did for him, but because what you're doing for me. And that's where everybody needs to get in the relationship with Jesus. Like, I see what you've done for my parents, but I know what you've done for me. And because of what you've done for me, I love you, Lord, with all my heart. My relationship is with you directly. It's not through my parents. And the people have to move away from their parents' faith to find their own. And that's an important step. Okay, and in 22, we have this thing, and I keep pointing this out because there's so many people who say, well, we're not under the law anymore, so like tithing has nothing to do with us. Okay, so we know that Abraham tithed. We don't know about Jacob or about Isaac. We have no indication about that. But look at here, look at Jacob. Um, and look at his attitude. This is part of his worship. This is part of his thanksgiving. This stone that I've set up as a sacred pillar will be God's house. And of everything you give me, I will give a tenth back to you. And of everything you give me, I will give a tenth back to you. Did the Lord ask that of him? Not that we know of. Not that it's written here. Uh, the thing is, before I'm too hard on Isaac, I do want to point out that Jacob would have had to seen this modeled somewhere. Somewhere he would have had to see this done. So maybe it's not mentioned, but Jacob would have seen maybe Isaac tithing. We know that Abraham did. It only makes sense that he taught his son Isaac to do it. Did Jacob see that? And his first response then is 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 a response of thanksgiving and of worship, and because his father worshipped by giving tenth, that he's giving tenth. I don't know. That's speculation. It would make sense, but we do know here Abraham did it, and now Jacob's doing it. This is a legitimate expression of love, of worship, of appreciation. So just a couple things to note here from Genesis 29, and I think it's one verse I want to look at. Genesis 29. So things of note. First of all, the roles of men and women were not so clearly defined as some people think they are in the Bible. Jacob learned to prepare meals. That's what happened when Esau came in from the field. Uh, uh, Jacob was making himself some stew. And yeah, it only makes sense. He's still a bachelor. If he's going to be out living on his own, then he needs to know how to cook. So it only makes sense. So we see an example of a man, especially tending the flock. He would be out in the wilderness, and he would have to know how to cook for himself. And then we have Rebecca, an example of Rebecca. Rebecca was the shepherd. She was the shepherd of the family's flock of sheep. This, that's always seen as a male thing, isn't it? But no, she was the shepherd of the family's flock of sheep. What's a family supposed to do if they have no sons? So it really it was, you did what was necessary. You did what was necessary. And so if Jacob needed to cook, he knew how to cook. If the family needed a daughter as a shepherd, then the daughter was a shepherd. It's simple as that. So yeah, we get hung up on these sort of things. We sometimes we live more by tradition than what people realize. And the second thing to note, Jacob seems to be a good guy. Just looking at how he looked after Rebecca, um, we don't see anything where he took advantage of his brother, but that was his brother's own fault. Um, it's if his brother wants to offer up his birthright, then why not? Uh, but everything else, it seems like Jacob was a good guy compared to the rest of the family. And now he falls prey to his abusive uncle. He was abused by his uncle. That's all you can say about this. He was abused by his uncle. And the verse I wanted to look at has to do with that. In verse 30, um, there's no other way around it. This is abuse. Uh, Jake, just this. Jacob slept with Rachel, and he loved Rachel more than Leah. He worked for Laban 7 more years. Now, I want you to understand that. Don't be hard on Jacob about this. Okay, don't be hard on Jacob concerning Leah. He was clear from the day his uncle said to him, "What wages do you want?" He was very clear about his love for Rachel. That was the deal for the first 7 years. He worked 7 years looking forward to having Rachel as his wife, of being able to have her hand in marriage. That's yeah, 7 years of his life. 7 years he gave up for Rachel. That's how much he loved her. And he got tricked. He didn't ask for Leah. He did not say he loves Leah. Um, he probably liked her, but suddenly he's married to her. That wasn't the deal. And then he worked another 7 years. So he really worked 14 years for the love of his life. Now, the thing I do want to point out as well, though, is he didn't abandon Leah. He didn't walk away. Um, he made a vow. It was a wedding vow, and even though he was tricked into it, he stuck to it. he stuck to that covenant with Leah. And I think, it's my personal belief, I think that Jacob came to love Leah. Maybe not as much as Rachel, but I think he did come to love Leah. And but I just could not imagine that, being married to two rival sisters. Man, no wonder he spent so much time out with the flock. But anyway, it's just going forward, just keep that in mind. Just try to keep that in mind. And this is all the stuff that's happening. It's not sanctioned by God. This is the mess that we make of things. This is the humanity that we were before Christ. This is the fall. This is the mess. This is how hard we make it. But but God is still using all this mess to move the plan forward. Keep an eye on that. He's moving the plan forward. Um, Maybe it was his foreknowledge. That's the reason why he met with Jacob before Jacob ran into Laban, because he wanted to assure him, this guy's a jerk. He's oh man, he's coming into a relationship with a jerk and with an abuser. I got to assure him right now that I'm not going to abandon him in that place. I am with him there. I'm going to protect him, and I'm going to bring him back here so that Jacob would know that there was going to be a way out. That's the way I see it, anyway. So that's a lot. I probably talked much longer than I intended to, and I'm really sorry. I'm just very passionate about my relationship with the Lord, and I want you to discover just how marvelous, how deep, how wonderful He is, and how rich a relationship with Him is. So you guys be blessed today. Just remember the promises the Lord has given you, that He'd be with you to the very end of this age. To the very end, He says He'll be with us, and that's a promise you can bank on. So you guys be blessed, be encouraged. Open yourselves to hear Him today and see what He wants to show you. Love you guys.